who is either a human or a post-human or a pre-human or a superhuman, please turn your videos on. Now, so let us just get into this lecture in this holy season, the unholy trinity of man, superman, and the post-human. We are discussing post-humanism. And what I would try to do in this particular lecture is to definitely give you a holistic perspective of posthumanism. And along with that, I would also try to take a look at the other versions of or the various phases of posthumanism, like transhumanism, or we will be discussing some of those manifestations of posthumanism as it exists in the 21st century academic scene. I would also have, for all the good reasons, when we are invoking the Trinity, I should definitely invoke God. And for all good reasons, I would love to have heavenly providence throughout this lecture. It is part tongue-in-cheek, part literary, part fun as well. But the point is, God will be the guiding thread throughout this lecture. And I would try to communicate, try to impress upon you why God is an important aspect in all our understandings of the post-human. Whether we are speaking in favor of the post-human or against the post-human, God is everywhere. The omniscience, the omnipotence of God cannot be overstated in any of these discussions. And uh, slightly, I will try to slightly go off track in the sense I wouldn't be talking strictly about posthumanism strictly from a late 20th or early 21st century perspective. I would also look at the myths, the classical stories, uh, even go back to people like Nietzsche and his Übermensch to make better sense of the post-human and the post-human condition. Now, our age, our era, our epoch, we define our epoch as the Anthropocene. We sometimes call it the Gen Y. We sometimes call it the meta-modern age. Francisco Ferrando, who is considered to be one of the apostles of posthumanism today, she argues that the current era can be defined as the post-human, and the terms post-human and posthumanism, by common consensus, first appeared within postmodern literature. It was literary theorist Ihab Hassan, uh, one among the first to use these particular terms, post-human and post-humanism, in his article Prometheus as Prometheus as performer towards a post-humanist culture. This essay came out in 1977, and he later developed his ideas, originally created in this particular essay, into the book The Postmodern Turn. And the generally accepted point of beginning or point of departure into posthumanism would be to talk about Ihab Hassan and to talk about the beginning of posthumanism. I would, slightly go off track. This is the accepted way of looking at things. We would say that this is where posthuman ways of looking at things began. However, uh, for those who have come across Dante's Divine Comedy, especially the ending parts of the second book and the beginning parts of the third book, the purgatory, and the section discussing heaven. So, in the Divine Comedy, author, poet Dante Alighieri embarks on a journey through the afterlife. Yeah, we agree on that. So, and in his journey through the afterlife, Dante is guided by the deceased Roman poet Virgil. He's guided, taken through hell and the purgatory by none other than the poet Virgil. So when a poet takes you through a walking tour, definitely that is going to be enlightening and entertaining. And Dante goes with Virgil through various regions of heaven and the purgatory, but when they finally arrive at the border between purgatory and heaven, Virgil says, sorry, I am not a Christian. I am not a baptized Christian. So, I am a good man. So, I can theoretically enter heaven. But as per theology, as per medieval Christian theology, I cannot enter heaven. Now, in the 21st century, definitely Virgil can enter heaven because the concepts have been revised by the Pope. So, Virgil can enter heaven. But in those times, he couldn't enter heaven because he was not a baptized Christian. So he says, sorry, I end my guided tour here. Now you have to take a new tour guide for your visit into heaven. And now who takes up the task of guiding Dante through heaven? It is none other than his beloved Beatrice, whom he lost some years ago. Uh, Dante met and fell in love on first sight with Beatrice when he was 3 years or 9 years old. And he says that they met just twice during their entire lifetime. He didn't get married to her. He was forced to marry some other lady, and she died at the age of 25. So it was the story of an unconsummated love, like we speak about Keats and Fanny Brown. Anyway, because Dante wrote the Divine Comedy, he got this fine opportunity to have Beatrice as his tour guide as he steps into heaven. What better place to be with Beatrice than heaven? So he is delighted. He arrives, he's at the border between purgatory and heaven, and it is the beautiful Beatrice who is going to guide him for the rest of his journey through the heavenly realm. Dante now has to first step through a dangerous circle of fire before he enters heaven. We know or we understand heaven as the epitome or the apex of human existence, and as such it is like no other states of being. Humans must be transformed in order to enter its regions. Naturally, you cannot look at the sun because we are human beings. To look at the sun, to send a mission to the sun, first we should get transformed to such an extent that we should be able to come closer to the sun. Similarly, to reach heaven, we should reach that state of holiness, not being, colored in all the hues of holy, but having holiness, having virtuosity to such an extent that we are eligible to reach heaven or enter heaven. So significantly, this state of entering heaven is so unprecedented that Dante suggests that there are no words to describe it. He uses words like the ineffable to describe what the heaven is. And he creates or coins a new word, a neologism uh, called transhumanar, which, when translated into English, would mean a verb meaning to transhumanize. To transhumanize. So, in my book, the word transhuman and by extension posthuman was coined by Dante in the 14th century when he tried to capture the event whereby a human being becomes something entirely other than human. He ceases to be a human being and he commences another cycle, another phase in his life, or a post human phase in his life. And for Dante, it is the event of being transformed by the beatific vision of coming face to face with God. Now, we are not interested in Dante's meeting with God. Hope he had a good time there. But Dante's new word to transhumanize, as we can see, it's a verb which describes a process. So, what is the process? The process is no less than the being getting transformed into perfection of the human being. When a human being gets transformed into a state of perfection, you can call it this using this particular verb to transhumanize. Now, I will give you a few excerpts from not exactly quotations, but a few instances. When Dante first meets Beatrice, she looks directly into the sun with eyes that are perfectly suited to achieve that feat. I would say Beatrice's eyes are post-human eyes. Dante remembers Beatrice in her earthly state. He remembers her very well, but now she is transformed. And as she ascends the stairs of heaven, the realms of heaven, she acquires or she exhibits superhuman traits. Her eyes shine brighter than the stars. Now, for a moment, we will be forgiven if we assume that yes, Dante is a poet. So when he describes his beloved, naturally he will be using a lot of metaphors and a lot of hyperbole. But here that is not the case. This is literal. Her eyes shine brighter than the stars, and her eyes were bigger than they were when she was on earth. Her lips are lusher and more red and plump. She is perfected. Beatrice becomes a perfected human with powers that she didn't have previously in her earthly existence. She is more spiritually aware, more beautiful, and more articulate than the earthly version of herself. Additionally, and most significantly, her beauty mesmerizes and transforms Dante to such an extent that he responds to Beatrice's presence by desiring to undergo his own transformation. He wants to become a post-human or a transhuman as well. He wants to be transhumanized. He desires to see the divine and to become transhumanized. In other words, her example is infectious. I'm sure that most of us here are familiar with the post-human, or you have come across certain ideas of the post-human, and I hope that you can see the connections, the way Beatrice is transformed, and the way Dante himself wants to be transformed because of the effect of being under the influence of his beloved Beatrice. Posthumanism is a way of thinking. Thinking about what? Thinking about the blurred boundaries between the human, the non human, and the machine or the technological realm. And why has it attained so much of a global attention in the late 20th and early 21st century? I would say because it happened in the wake of, ecological concerns, environmental concerns, climate change, that calls the events that call into question the role of humans in shaping the fate of our earth. Posthumanism completely rejects the human as traditionally understood by our humanism. Man as the crown of creation. Man, man created in the likeness of God, all those stuff. Posthumanism has nothing to do with that. It rejects man as understood by humanism, especially man's status as separate from or superior to the world around him. Posthumanism, in a deconstructive sense, decentralizes the human, accounts for the non human, and examines the relationships between humans and non humans. When I say non humans, I would include both, animals, plants, uh, you know, machines, the cyborgs, the aliens, all those things that can be brought under the term non-human. And it does not, posthumanism does not, divide things into strict categories. It does not draw stark distinctions between human, animal, or the machine, as say for example the Descartian philosophy would have it. Instead, posthumanism focuses on how everything is made up of the same building blocks of matter, existing within and alongside or coexisting with each other. It's about coexistence. And I was telling you, it is, if we look at it in the deconstructive way, always remember, in deconstruction, when you are decentering something, it doesn't mean putting what is at the center into the margins. It simply means coexistence. It never means, so when we say we deconstruct man, we are not trying to say that man is taken to the margins and animals and machines are brought to the center. No. What we talk here is about man, machines, animals, plants, everything coexisting, having the same status. There is no hierarchy whatsoever. And in its critique of in its critique of humanism, posthumanism calls for a re-evaluation of traditional humanistic myths, such as man at the center of the universe, or the instrumental attitude towards other living matter or non-living matter. What is this instrumental attitude? Animals are here for us to use, or machines are here so that we can improve the quality of our life. They are just objects to be utilized by man. This is what I mean by the instrumental attitude. And posthumanism calls into question, decentralizes, destabilizes, demolishes this attitude of traditional humanism. Posthumanism also demolishes the nature culture binary enshrined in the Euro American tradition, and it would also argue that technologies and humans not only coexist but also co evolve. That evolution also happen simultaneously. Just as humans and non humans evolve, simultaneously. Same with technology and humans as well. And that is why it examines the prospects of, things like human uh, gene enhancement, the expansion of artificial intelligence, the AI systems, and the ethics concerning these developments. So, what I'm trying to tell you is, of course, posthumanism is not a single unified way of looking at things. It is an umbrella term to refer to a variety of movements, a lot many schools of thought, most important ones being, of course, posthumanism, and then transhumanism and anti-humanism. And each of these movements, on their own right, are composed of a plurality of voices within. It is not like transhumanism is crystal clear. This is transhumanism. Even within transhumanism, there are polyphonic voices. There are different ways of looking at transhumanism. Same with anti-humanism. Only important thing we need to understand is what transhumanism would mean in general, what anti-humanism would mean in general. We have to be very sure that anti-humanism is not anti-human, because certain books and certain articles that are being published these days keep telling us, or suggest that anti-humanism would also mean anti-human. That is not the essential way of looking at anti-humanism. Anti-humanism has nothing to do with destroying human beings as we know them now. Nothing like that. It is okay with human beings as they are, but it looks at it as a dynamic thing. Man is something that is evolving all the time. And and this is where probably we have to think about the grain. In literary theory, where do we have this grain? We are not farmers. We are not discussing varieties of seeds to be planted. So why are we talking about the grain? We had people like deconstructionists defining deconstruction as the reading against the grain, and uh, uh, I have I feel that reading against the grain is also the method used by posthumanism. Look at the intellectual history of the past few centuries. Our intellectual history is characterized by a series of successful demolitions of assuring, comforting myths through which we have sought to locate ourselves in the world. As human beings, we have our own comfort zones and we have created myths around those comfort zones. And we want to think of ourselves as sacrosanct, as safe, as good, as loved, as in control, all these things. But the intellectual history of man tells us that all these myths have been systematically demolished. All these comforting, consoling myths have been systematically demolished across the past few centuries. First came Copernicus. He displaced humanity from the physical center of the universe. No, no, my dear friends, you are not the center of the universe. You can be there in the earth, and earth is just a planet, and so be calm, be quiet. You are not the center of the universe, said Copernicus. A few centuries later, another man came, and here we have a biologist by the name Charles Darwin, and he unleashed Pandora's box of problems into the world in 1857 when he published his book, The Origin of Species. And then we started realizing that probably we lost our tails, or the human tail is no longer a sacrosanct one. We were monkeys and we are monkeys without tails. Darwin pointed out that humanity occupied no biologically privileged position. Then came in the 20th century a man by the name Sigmund Freud. He claimed that one of our fondly cherished distinctive characteristics, our rationality. Until then, even I think even when we were children, the textbooks used to say man is different from animals because man has rationality. So probably Sigmund Freud was late to enter our textbooks. Nowadays, children don't study these things. So Freud said, see, rationality is there, but it is the idea that it is man alone who has rationality is at best a sham, at best a pretension. No, it is not like that. Now, you can find lot many other people who have demolished comforting myths, but I would take only these three people. And one common thread running through the contributions of Copernicus and Charles Darwin and Sigmund Freud to our intellectual history is that they were all reading the world against the grain. They tried to read the world against the grain. Although they worked in and they spoke about different fields of study. Copernicus from astronomy, Darwin from biology, Freud from psychology or psychoanalysis. So different fields, but one common thread, they were reading against the grain. Now, what is literary criticism? Yeah, we are in the world of literary theory. We no longer speak about literary criticism, but in a way, literary theory is an advanced version of literary criticism. So, in common man's parlance, literary criticism is an attempt to explain the literary work, or literary criticism tries to explain the literary work to us. I think it is Dyson's book that gives this definition. Tyson, a history of English literature, somebody, Louis Tyson, I forgot the name. Literary criticism tries to explain the literary work to us. That is how it is defined. Now, how do we understand the literary work using literary criticism? A literary critic would do two types of reading. Either he would read with the grain or he would read against the grain. Reading with the grain involves the traditional critical methods, involves explaining and interpreting the literary work the way it seems to invite us to interpret it, in a way to accept that the text can be interpreted the way the author intended us to see. So we are not talking about Wimsatt and Beardsley and their intentional fallacy. They said no. We have nothing to do with the author. The intention of the author is neither available nor desirable. And if you do that, you commit a fallacy called intentional fallacy, said Wimsatt and Beardsley. And we also saw many others talking about the death of the author. Again, intentionality of the author is not important. Death of the author, birth of the reader. Foucault speaking about what an author is, and then readings, conquering everything. Is there a text in the class? There are as many texts as there are readers and readings. So all these things dismantled this idea of looking at a text the way the author wanted us to see the text. Now, that is what is known as reading against the grain. Reading against the grain would imply seeing something that the author didn't intend, something he or she was unaware of, in a way. So, a literary critic, or as literary critics, we are invited to make a choice either to be a regular, traditional, ordinary critic who goes with the flow, or you can choose to work like Copernicus, Darwin, or Sigmund Freud and think and suggest in a rather original way. You can choose the road not taken. Yes, Shumapa.
Sir, the thinking that authors have suggested something and we're making something out of it, isn't it called effective fallacy according to the neocritics?
As per new critics, did I? No. Okay. As per new, they speak about two fallacies: intentional fallacy and
Yeah,
affective
and
fallacy.
effective fallacy.
Intentional fallacy is the error in judging a literary work based on the intention of the author. Affective fallacy is the error in judging a literary work based on the effect it produces on the reader. Now, the focus is on the reader. What effect does the literary work produce on the reader? That was what people like Aristotle said when they spoke about catharsis, the effect, or Longinus spoke about transport, sublime. The effect is transport, or Horace would speak about dulce et utile, to delight and to instruct. These are all formulations on the effect, affective. Affect is effect. Effect it produces on the reader. I was looking at intentionality and how the intention of the author is what we are interested in. Now, effect on the reader is different from, again, let us make that distinction very clear. It is not reader response criticism. When we look at the effect something produces on the reader, that is not reader response criticism. Reader response criticism would definitely say that it is the reader who creates the text. The text is created, or at least co-created, by the reader. The author is just an author function, a site, and it is the reader who creates the text. Because just because somebody writes a book, it doesn't exist. It comes to exist. It comes into being only when you or I read it. That is reader response. So let us make that clear distinction between what is intentionality and affectionality, as well as between effect on the reader, which is part of traditional criticism, and what the reader does. The reader becomes the subject, which is reader response criticism, which is part of literary theory. So that bifurcation, I guess that is clear. Now, moving on, what I'm trying to tell you, we have a choice to read against the grain and to read with the grain. Now, such scholars who read against the grain were largely found in a particular discipline called literary studies, because probably in modernism they read about things like road not taken. So everybody started reading against the grain. And then Derrida felt, okay, this is the best time for me to come and, not resurrect, but erect uh, the flagpoles of post-structuralism, structure, sign, and play in the discourse of the human sciences. John Hopkins University, Baltimore, USA, 1966, 1967, three major books. Derrida's contribution to literary theory is a definite case in point. Deconstruction is even defined as reading against the grain. And Derrida's reading of Western philosophy and its history demonstrated that there was no center, or that the center could not be a presence, but at best can only be an absence, a word, a sign substitution, that which is present in the center's absence. In other words, in the absence of a center or origin, everything becomes discourse. In the absence of a center, in the absence of a controlling transcendental signifier or signified, everything becomes discourse. And since Derrida, scholars and critics followed his footsteps and started reading human history characterized by the nature culture dichotomy by reading it as discursive constructions rather than elements of opposing structures from which meaning was attributed. Keeping it simple, what I am trying to say is posthumanism takes its origins also from the read against the grain motto of post-structuralism. Reading against the grain is what posthumanism anchors itself on. The central claim of posthumanism is that with humanism and all, human being or the human has been misconceived by nearly every thinker in the Western tradition. Most Western thinkers consider the human to be unlike any other kind of being, whether it is about animals or machines or savages or slaves and so on. Think about it. Each term in this binary dichotomy tells you about different theories. If you speak about, um, the Western versus the slaves, you are speaking about slavery. If you are speaking about the indigenous versus the savages, you are speaking about colonialism. If you are speaking about man versus animals, or man versus animals and machines, you are talking about posthumanism. Think about it. Everywhere we had certain binaries, certain boundaries being erected. And with this idea of reading against the grain, each of these boundaries or each of these binary oppositions were systematically dismantled. Earlier, we believed that there is man on the one hand and there is slaves on the other hand. There is man on the one hand and the savage on the other hand. Think about Tempest, man versus savage. Then we thought there is man on the one hand and animals on the other hand, animals or plants. Then we started thinking, when we started having machines, we started thinking man on the one hand and machines on the other hand. And everywhere, this side was privileged. Now, once we started reading against the grain, this privileging was completely dismantled. We no longer privilege anything. Instead, we look at things in a way that everything can coexist. And this is the idea that I wanted to convey when I spoke about reading against the grain. Thus, posthumanists argue that we have never been separate from machines, and the notions of humanness, being human, could not be produced without machines. Think about it. If you don't have a machine to juxtapose against, how would you speak about humanness? Because nothing is anything without having a binary opposite. Meaning is produced by difference. You can go back to Ferdinand de Saussure and his sign, signifier, and signified, arbitrarily produced. Meaning is produced by difference. All those things. Lang and Perol, syntagmatic and paradigmatic. Everything is such and such a relationship. So the relationship is arbitrary. Humanness cannot be produced if you don't have machineness. And in post-human discourse, we are not human beings but just human animals. Human animals. We cannot say human beings. If we call them animals, we are also a type of animals called human animals. Lion is a type of animal called the lion. Man is a type of animal called man. The tiger is a type of animal called tiger. And all we have in common is something like humanimal function. Humanimal function. It is malfunctioning definitely. So you can have malfunction at the end. Humanimal function. Human animal plus function, or human animal plus malfunction, or you can even have humanimal machines. Humanimal machines. That is what we have. And this word humanimal machines was coined by Tettman, Tettman, in his 2011 book on posthumanism. I forgot its title. um, Now, let us think a little bit about Superman. Let us think a little bit about, yes, yes, hand raised.
Sir, my question is that human beings have been existing before humans, and machines, they don't precede humans, they are after humans. So, why do we call the discipline post human, not pre human?
Well, just because, machines or man, just because man preceded machines, we are not talking about, when we talk about post-humanism, we are not talking about machines. We are talking about us. We are posthumans. We are not saying machines are posthumans. We are saying that we are posthumans. It is not about animals. It is, I don't say it is not about, but what I mean is the focus here in, again, when I speak about focus, I enter into, I create the same problem that we are trying to avoid by deconstructing. But for the sake of understanding, the focus here is on human, and why the human is not at the center. And post-human is blurring the boundaries so as to make it clear to us. Animals never had a problem. Machines never had a problem. Whether we call them pre or post or whatever, they don't have a problem. We have problems. So it is for us. And this post, man is being taken from post to pillar when we are talking about all these posts, whether it is post humanism or postmodernism or post colonialism. We are talking about that one meta narrative called humanism. And man is being taken to task, not animals, not the machines. Yes, machines came after human beings, but machines are a part of us. Or we say technology, but technology is a part of human evolution, and it is hardwired into our system. It is not like something that we invented because of our power. Even if it is we something that we invented, still, how can we invent? We can invent only if that is part of our system. It is not, just that when it comes to technology, what happens is our evolution happens outside our body. That's all. Think about any evolution. When man was first here, probably nature thought, let us give him three eyes, like a third eye behind, so that he can see what is happening behind also. But then probably what might have happened, this man started walking and he got confused. He's getting inputs from his front eyes and from his back eyes, and he wasn't sure where he was going. He probably started losing balance. He fell down into a ditch and he died. Or all humans who had three eyes died in course of time. And that is how that human being with two eyes started to survive, and that became the prominent version among human beings. Similarly, nature must have tried giving us wings. Nature must have tried giving us ability to live underwater, but it didn't stick. It didn't work. Instead, what man did was man externalized the entire evolutionary process. So instead of developing wings or having two wings behind his back, what he did was he invented an aeroplane. Problem solved. You can fly faster than or travel faster, quicker, everything. You can fly. Instead of learning to live underwater, what do? We invented these submarines and various technologies that help us live underwater. It's always, I'm so happy to see my dog when it jumps into a river and swims. I have never taken him to a river initially. He sees the river for the first time in his life because since his birth to that particular moment in time, I was taking care of him and he has never seen a river. I haven't even shown him a picture of a river. And still, that dog, when he sees the river, he simply jumps into a river and he easily swims. Where does it come from? It is hardwired into its system. We don't have it. We will also jump. Look at children. I see this and I find it immensely baffling and immensely interesting. If you take children to the seashore, take kids to the seashore, hold them by their hands, hang them by their hands like this, and put them to water or the tide, and they will always have their feet pulled upwards. They will never have their feet dirty. They will never have their feet on water. Though our instinct would tell us that children would love to play in water. But the moment the tide comes, the child's legs go up. Try taking a child to the field where there is grass. What do you think? Will the child step on the field or will its legs lift up? Its legs will
They
lift
will
up.
definitely try to, yeah.
They
Yeah,
will definitely try.
they will not step on the grass. Give it a try. They will always have like they have some repulsion or revulsion to grass. So we say that man is part of nature and man is part of fields and grass and pantheism and all these things, but it doesn't work so with human children. With dogs or with cat, they do it perfectly well. So what I was telling you was our evolution happens outside our bodies through technology, and when it happens outside our body, what also happens is evolution is faster. Nature's process of evolution has a particular idea called homeostasis, revulsion to change, resistance to change. Whereas human evolution, because it happens outside our bodies, do not have this feature called homeostasis, which prevents a certain evolution from destroying the entire species. Say, for example, we invent a new medicine that says that if you take this medicine, you will never die. Now, all of us take that medicine and we are very happy we are not going to die, but it was not properly tried and tested so that, say, in the year 2030, everyone is going to die. Now, there is no going back. We are all going to die, and the species is coming to an end because evolution is outside our bodies, because we created it through technology. We cannot prevent that from happening. Whereas if it is natural evolution, nature works through trial and error. And that evolution will always have certain sections of the species not accepting that particular change. That is why some of us can drink milk, some of us cannot drink milk. That is still an experiment in process. 5,000 years ago, none of us could drink milk. Even breast milk could be had by children until the age of 5. If a child drinks his own mother's milk after the age of 5, he will have vomiting, he will have stomach problems, he will not be able to digest it. And we could not, human children could not digest the milk of animals or anything, nothing at all. But 5,000 years ago, what happened was man started rearing cattle, having settled life, and part of that evolutionary process, nature gave it a try to see if man can drink other animals' milk as well. Initially, many of us resisted, and some of us still resist. And those people we call people who are lactose resistant. Those people cannot drink milk. Some of us have, you know, acidity problems when we take milk. Some of us don't have any problem. Some of us are like Dhoni. We can drink 6 liters of milk and still look fresh. Some of us even tasting or smelling milk and we will feel like retching. We will, this is what happens. So evolution is outside our bodies, but it is something that takes thousands of years usually. But human evolution, because it happens through technology, doesn't have time as a necessary ingredient. And that is why it is make or break, do or die. Utsab Ray has raised a hand. I'm sorry, I saw your hand, but I just wanted to complete my point, answer that question. Yes, Utsab sir, please.
No, no, I understand. This is so far. This is going excellently. I'm enjoying this talk. I would rather hold on to my point till the end of this talk. So please continue.
Okay, okay. That's so considerate of you, not to hold your point, but to say that it is going well. Yeah, anyone would be happy to listen to that. Now, let us. Okay, the way we are going, I think I have to take you to Nietzsche. I love Nietzsche not because he said God is dead, but because of all the hue and cry made against poor Nietzsche when he made a philosophical formulation saying that God is dead, and we still say that God, Nietzsche said God is dead. Yet we know that famous writing on the wall, right? After Nietzsche died, somebody wrote on Nietzsche's wall, Nietzsche is dead. Quotation below God. So earlier it was God is dead. Quotation Nietzsche. And after Nietzsche is gone,
Same thing
God's
happened with Stephen Hawking as well. Earlier,
yeah.
people said that, yeah, Stephen Hawking is dead.
Stephen Hawking. Yes, 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 yes. Stephen Hawking is dead. Yeah. So, Nietzsche, you know, Nietzsche is an absolutely lovable philosopher. There are fewer philosophers who are more lovable and likable. I would say Coleridge is probably the greatest, who is most lovable and likable and enjoyable. And after Coleridge and Emmanuel Levinas, I would say it is Nietzsche. The way he writes, the way the whole thing moves. I'm not only speaking about his major works, I'm also speaking about his marginal, not so famous works as well. And here I would like to bring your attention to this wonderful book titled Thus Spake Zarathustra. Thus Spake Zarathustra. And the subtitle of that book is even lovelier, a book for all and none. A book for all and none. Uh, Somewhere we are reminded of Erihon, nowhere. But there is something very beautiful about this title. Thus Spake Zarathustra, a book for all and none, published in 1883. And when you read it, you realize how far ahead of his times this man was and how far ahead of us he is. We are still unable to grasp Nietzsche because I think Nietzsche should have been born somewhere in 2550 AD or something, not in that bloody 19th century, who could not understand. Even us, we are just even bloodier. We cannot understand anything he has written. So, but I would just quote a few things from him and leave it to your imagination and your intellect and your insight to help you navigate through Nietzsche's poetical, prophetical promulgation. So his fundamental contention was traditional values represented primarily by Christianity had lost their power in the lives of individuals. And he expressed that in his proclamation, God is dead. Since God is dead, Nietzsche felt the necessity for the emergence of the Übermensch, the overman or the superman, to replace that God. And I will read for you a particular part. This is taken from Book One, Zarathustra's Prologue, from Thus Spake Zarathustra. So here goes the quote. Let's see if we can enjoy it. I mean, I don't want you to think about it. I want you to just enjoy it because Nietzsche is fun, super fun. And his idea of Superman is super fun too. Oh, my brothers, Is not man something to be surpassed? What have ye done to surpass man? This is the question. I think when Nadia Comaneci scored that perfect 10 on 10, she answered this question: what have ye done to surpass man? She scored a 10 on 10 in gymnastics. When Don Bradman went out to bat with his career average hovering around 100, he had his eyes firmly set on this question: what have ye done to surpass man? And even today, Bradman's record of 99.94, the test average, stays well intact, telling us that he probably surpassed man as his generation knew man. So there are a few people, but if you look at 100-meter race, it keeps improving every year. Every year, 9.9 seconds, 9.83 seconds, 9.78 seconds, it keeps going down and down. Is not man something to be surpassed? What have ye done to surpass man? All beings hitherto have created something beyond themselves. Hmm. Nietzsche says everything else have done that. And you want to be the ebb of that great tide and would rather go back to the beast than surpass man? So you still want to surpass man, but you are not ready to, or you want to go back to that beastly nature? Man, come on, man. Be the Superman. What is the ape to man? What is the ape to man? Nietzsche himself replies, a laughing stock or a painful embarrassment. And just the same shall man be to the Superman, a laughing stock or a painful embarrassment. Just as the ape is a laughing stock or a painful embarrassment to us human beings, to the Superman, we will be a laughing stock or a painful embarrassment. And I have lost all the faces in these icons. Please come back. I need some faces. Okay. Now, what is the ape to man? You have made your way from worm to man, and much within you is still worm. Once you were apes, and even now too, man is more ape than any ape. Oh my God, how cynical and how sarcastic this man was, right? He was saying man is more ape than any ape. Even the wisest among you is only a disharmony and hybrid of plant and phantom. Come on. You think you are the crown of creation, right? See, what is it? Even the wisest among you is only a disharmony, is a mess and hybrid. At best, you are a hybrid. You are a collection, a haphazard collection of plant and phantom. What is it? The waste matter from animals and plants, the ghost and the plant. But do I bid you become phantoms or plants? Zarathustra asks, do I bid you become phantoms or plants? Am I telling you to become phantoms or plants? No, no. I teach you the Superman. The Superman is the meaning of the earth. The Superman is the meaning of the earth. Now, I think this sentence, which ends, is the meaning of the earth, is also the reason why posthumanism has its roots in concerns about the earth, in climate issues, in issues concerning environment, because the Superman is the meaning of the earth. Once, blasphemy against God was the greatest blasphemy, but God died, and therewith also those blasphemers. Of course, they couldn't blaspheme because God is dead. To blaspheme the earth is now the dreadfulest sin. Isn't Nietzsche telling about posthumanism, my dear friends? To blaspheme the earth. Isn't it where posthumanism takes birth? When man started blaspheming the earth to such an extent that, who is that person? Elon Musk started talking about going to Mars as the only way for the survival of our species, blaspheming the planet, blaspheming the earth. It is the deadliest and the dreadfulest sin. I love Nietzsche, so I read a little bit more and then I will stop. Verily, stop this quotation, I mean, verily, truly, a polluted stream is man. Man, you are a polluted stream. So the problem is, which sea will have you? Which sea will have you? If you are a polluted stream, which sea can have you? One must be a sea to receive a polluted stream without becoming impure. And he says, lo, I teach you the Superman. He is that sea. In him can your great contempt be submerged. And it is the great noontide. This is even lovelier, the great noontide. Neither here nor there, neither morning, neither morn nor dusk. Where man is in the middle of his course between animal and superman and celebrates his advance to the evening of his highest hope, for it is the advance to a new morning. And if you believe Zarathustra, if you believe Nietzsche, posthumanism is all good because it is the advance to a new morning, to a new dawn. And it doesn't matter whether we are there to witness that new dawn. We, in the sense, human beings are there to witness not that new dawn. It doesn't matter. If we really care, it shouldn't matter because we human beings have been a completely failed species as far as poor earth is concerned. We have made it into a complete dumping ground, isn't it so? you know it goes on and on and on, and we will just marvel at the glory and the greatness of Zarathustra and Nietzsche. But I stop Nietzsche here. Now, what is this problem with man and God? What is the problem with man and God? Think about it. Is it like monkey to man to God? Is it how our evolution should be? We were first monkeys, then we turned into human beings, and now we are aspiring to become gods. So, is it the evolution? Or is it like beast evolving into man and man evolving into the Superman? Is God the Superman? Is God, is the Christian God the Superman? I mean, if you look at religion and all religions for that matter, especially Christianity, there is something wrong or something uniquely paradoxical and ironic in the relationship between man and God. Think of the Christian God. God created man in his likeness. That is what the book of Genesis says. It says, let us make man. God says, let us create man in our image and in our likeness, and let us have him dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fish, over the air, over the cattle, over the earth, complete control over everything. That is how God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. This is how the quotation goes. Now, this passage is often cited to emphasize the belief that human beings were created in the image and likeness of God, suggesting what? A special reflection and a relationship of and a reflection of divine attributes within humanity. Okay, we want human beings to be perfect, to be closer to God, right? God wanted us to be more like God. That is why God created us in his likeness, his image. Now, there are numerous quotations from the Bible, and ChatGPT would help us retrieve all those quotes from the Holy Bible, which would tell us how we have to be perfect like God, and that is what God wants from us. Book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 48 says, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. So your calling is to be Perfect. Or first book of John, chapter 3, verse 2. Beloved, now we are the sons of God. When he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. We are trying to be more like God. Lot of quotations. I'm just skipping all these quotes because you can find it here on ChatGPT, and Bart can help you uncover all these things. Ephesians would say, you put off the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lust, and put on the new man, which after God is created in his righteousness and true holiness. The idea is these verses convey the idea, the purpose or destiny of humanity is to reflect the likeness and character of God, ultimately achieving a state of perfection or likeness to Him, God. Becoming God is the of ultimate, aim of human beings. This is how things are done or things are said. But what happens when man tries to reach or be like God? We know the first story when the serpent tells Eve that if she eats the forbidden fruit, she will be like God or she will be God. Now, what is the aim of man? To be like God. So, yes, Eve disobeys God, but she disobeys God for a greater purpose, isn't it so? She disobeys God so that she can be like God. And isn't Godhead that beautiful? But what happened? What was the result? They were Adam and Eve. Both of them were cast out of the Garden of Eden and exiled to earth to toil and suffer. The second incident, the Tower of Babel. Again, what was the intention of man? Man tried to build a tower reaching to the heavens, reaching God. Now, isn't that beautiful? Isn't that the ultimate purpose of man? To reach God. So, man tried to create the tower to reach God and to prevent being scattered across the earth. Again, unity. Unity is good, right? Unity is good. Yeah. But what did God do? What is the result? God responded by confusing their languages, causing them to be unable to one another, unable to understand each other, and scattering them across the earth. And we see this story repeating in Hinduism as well. Whenever man tries to unite, gods are terrified. The king of gods, God, Lord Indra, is the first one to be terrified and he walks left and right like a father who is worried when the wife is in the delivery room until it is home delivery, same day delivery. The husband is so worried. Same with Lord Indra, he gets worried when people are united. People try to be like God, attaining Godhead. So there are numerous such cautionary tales demonstrating the consequences of man's attempts to elevate themselves to the status of God. Isn't it so? So, isn't there a problem, a minor problem in all religions? They, on the one hand, they say you have to reach God, you have to be like God. But whenever you try to be like God or reach God, God just interferes and destroys all your plans. Look at Hinduism. There are descriptions of the divine nature inherent within humans and their relationship with divine. Rig Veda speaks about it. The Rig Veda speaks about the unity of the Atman and the Brahman, the individual soul commingling with the universal spirit. The Bhagavad Gita speaks about the union between the Jivatma and the Paramatma, the individual soul and the supreme being. The Chandogya Upanishad, the Taittiriya Upanishad, all these Upanishads have very interesting things to say, which tell us that we are created to be like gods. We are created to be one with God, to be closer to God, all these things. However, what also happens is there are so many instances in strewn across Hindu religious texts where individuals faces consequences for their actions when they attempt to be like God or when they attempt to overstep their boundaries. Now, what have you done to surpass men? Whenever these people try to respond to Nietzsche, they always had problems. Think about what happens in Srimad Bhagavatam. King Vena, he claimed himself to be the supreme lord. and he stopped all, what is it, all yajnas. He stopped all yajnas, and what happened? He was killed by the anger of the sages. In Shiva Purana, we have the story of Ravana, who considers himself equal to the gods and even attempts to uproot Mount Kailash, the abode of Lord Shiva. Now he is very angry. This act of arrogance by Ravana invites the wrath of Lord Shiva, who pressed the mountain down with his toe. His toe, he pushed it down, trapping Ravana beneath until Ravana says, "Sorry, bro, I mistook it. Sorry, really sorry. Won't repeat it again. Please forgive, bro." All those things. And finally, he got pardoned. In the Brahma Purana, there is the story of that wonderfully beautiful name, Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu. Lord Vishnu, in the form of Narasimha, defeats Hiranyakashipu and restores balance to the universe. So gods don't allow us to be like gods, right? Gods don't like us to reach that godhood. You know, Islam. Islam highlights the concept of fitra. Fitra. Yeah, we are our Islam, our brothers and sisters from Islam are now observing the Ramadan fast. That is also part of fitra, but fitra has an original meaning, which can be understood as the natural disposition or innate inclination towards recognizing and worshipping God. There is an inclination to be one with God, which is there in every human being. This is what fitra could mean. It refers to the innate nature of man and the attributed spirit, al ruh, al Al Fidahi, is it? Al Ruh and Al Fidahi, implying that it has both human and divine characteristics. Of course, we know the other meaning of fitra, known as Sakat Al Fitr, which refers to the charitable mandatory donation that all Muslims are expected to make before Eid ul Fitr, the festival that marks the end of the Ramadan season. The word fitr there would mean breaking a fast, break fast, and comes from the same root as futur, which would mean breakfast. Just all interesting connections. So the point I'm trying to make is something that somebody like Blaise Pascal would say. Who is Blaise Pascal? The French mathematician who invented the Pascaline machine, a pioneering device whose invention is considered to be a precursor to modern computers. Now, technology, we are so talking about technology. Now, this man, Blaise Pascal, he makes a very human statement or very divine statement. He says, there is a God shaped vacuum in the heart of each man, which cannot be satisfied by any created thing except by God the Creator. This is what Blaise Pascal says. Now, why am I bringing in God and why am I so much in love with God? Not only because I am a pious, lovely creator of God, and not only because I want to enter heaven giving some bribe, at least if not Beatrice, at least some witches would be there to take me through. That is what I'm hoping. So we want to be at least on the veranda or on the corridors of heaven, if not in the main hall of heaven. So, we can't understand posthumanism without understanding man, without understanding humanism, without understanding the notion of the divine within human. Hence, for a better understanding of the basic precepts of posthumanism, transhumanism, anti-humanism, bioconservative ethics, I have chosen this godly intervention. I have not like prayed, but I have asked for heavenly providence to take care of these ideas so that we can make better sense of it. Now, there are different questions. Is man becoming God? Man becoming God. Is posthumanism about man becoming God? Transhumanists would say so. Transhumanists would say that we are becoming not only posthumans but also gods. We are becoming gods. That is what transhumans would say. So, some of the qualities that are historically attributed exclusively to God are now accessible to us as well. And these qualities can be eventually achieved via science and technology, via artificial intelligence. In other words, technology is the password to access that forbidden fruit which cast us first out of the Garden of Eden. So you have that key and you can still unlock the Garden of Eden to godliness, to apotheosis, becoming God. So the goal of transhumanism is to bring about post-humans who are possible future beings whose basic capacities are capacities so completely and so radically exceed those of present human beings as to be no longer unambiguously human by our present standards. They will be very different from us, maybe through whatever ways, human evolution. uh, what we are going to do is we are becoming post-humans, and those post-humans will be far different from us. Humanity perfected, humanity completed, our telos, our goal. As Max Moore, you know I think he drank something when he said this. Maybe the same thing that that Coleridge drank when he was sitting and writing that Kubla Khan. Because this is what he says. I would say he said it in a fit of ecstasy, but somebody would say that he said this in another fit as well. He said, "No more gods, no more faiths, no more timid holding back. Let us blast out of our old forms, our ignorance, our weakness, and our mortality." I think that T should be put in, you know, brackets. Mortality or morality. Let us blast out of our morality as well. The future is ours. In his essay, he says, transhumanism towards a futurist philosophy. This essay came out in 1990 by Max Moore. So we are not humans. No, humanism has come to an end. Posthumanism has begun. We are posthumans. Technology is an integral part of our lives, and posthumans, no longer confined by humanness, can grow so powerful as to appear godlike. This is the idea of the concept of posthuman God. Some of the qualities traditionally attributed to God are now accessible to us. And now, what are these qualities? Briefly, if you look at it, immortality. Immortality is something that we usually attribute to God. Now, how can we attain immortality? Already scientists are talking about immortality. They are talking about radical life extension, gene editing, prenatal genetic modification, and we are reaching towards that goal of immortality. And uh, what would that mean? There is something tragic as well. A tail end to that would be, it would, machines or whoever thus created, or AI which is thus created, it would thus have no evolutionary need for love or to have children that live on after it dies. See, why do we then memory studies would cease to exist? We need not have any memory studies, because who is worried about memory? Because we can remember, and everything is stored in a chip. Everything is fine. And we are not going to die. So we don't need any commemorations. We don't need any epitaphs. People will not have anything to write. Please write this on my epitaph. No, we will not say please don't move my bonds. We will just say please don't move my mouse or please don't move my laptop, but we will never say please spare my bonds, as Shakespeare would say. Omniscience, all knowing. Now I don't have to explain. Technology, AI, chat GPT, all knowing. AI tools gives us a lot of omniscience. Internet. So the question has changed, and from theism, we moved to atheism, and now we have moved to dataism. Dataism. It is now the age of dataism. And you all know Noah Harari, the Israeli thinker. People like those would talk about dataism as the new gospel, as the new thing to be reached. Omnipotence, the power to do anything. Again, this is possible thanks to technology, thanks to AI, omnipresence. Think about virtual reality, Internet of Things, augmented reality, and omnipresence is very much possible. I am sitting here, you are sitting there, and we are sitting together. Place doesn't matter. Place doesn't matter. So, the essence is technology enables us to access the qualities traditionally ascribed to God: omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, immortality, anything and everything. So, man is becoming God, but on the other hand, man is becoming slave. It is said technology is a useful servant but a dangerous master. I wouldn't dwell much on it because I think it is time for me to wind up. Uh, so think of things like intelligence explosion, an ultra intelligent machine coming and defeating the human beings. Uh, Probably I should just quote Oppenheimer quoting the Bhagavad Gita after witnessing the first successful test of the atom bomb. Oppenheimer, he says, I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Yes, Rahul. Ratul. Yes, thank you. I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. So man is becoming God, man is becoming slave simultaneously, and man is playing God as well. Man plays God through genetic engineering. What is playing God? It would amount to creation. It would amount to creating other human beings. There is a realistic chance that man may eventually extend life so radically so as to gain immortality. And of course this has invited a lot of criticism. And it is no longer, the question is not to be or not to be. The question now is to be or not to be genetically modified. Do I want to be genetically modified, or do I want my child to be genetically engineered? And here comes terms like designer baby, a baby which is planned. Everything is planned. She should have eyes like Aishwarya Rai. She should have this like her, this like him. All those features are planned, fixed, and just take a printout, a kind of thing. Gene editing, all those things are happening. And then we are talking about man killing gods, anti-humanism, and the death of God, which Nietzsche talked about, the Ubermensch or the Overman. So I will just wind this up with this particular thought. According to Nietzsche, God didn't just die. We have killed him. Isn't it so? This is what Nietzsche makes clear. Though we usually say Nietzsche pronounced the death of God, Nietzsche makes it very clear that it is not like God just died a natural death. We killed him. We have killed him. Now, who is this we? You. Ratul Ghosh, did you kill God? But Sam Mundal, did you? Soham sir, did you? No. No, it's not me. Anyway, it is not me. I didn't kill God. I haven't even killed a human being, so I haven't killed God. Then who killed God? Who is this we? Who killed God? Did you? Did me? Did you kill God? Did you kill the human? When someone talks about death, it also means that someone has survived. Now, when we talk about the death of God, who is the survivor in the death of God? As well as the survivor in the death of man, because we are talking about posthumanism. So, who is the survivor in the death of God and death of man? Anti-humanism locates itself in the death of God and also in the death of man, but posthumanism does not. So, yeah, posthumanism, transhumanism, or anti-humanism is something that you talk of as being one of the subcategories of posthumanism. But this is a subtle and a major distinction between posthumanism and anti-humanism. And if we have the power to kill immortal gods, who are we? Now, let us be honest about it. We have had the power to create immortal gods as well, not just kill. First, first we created immortal gods, then we killed immortal gods. So who are we? And if we have the power to kill and to create immortal gods, aren't we immortal gods? Aren't we immortal gods? But then, if we are immortal gods, shouldn't we start behaving like gods? And if we start behaving like gods, like which god should we start behave? Like the god who felt worried when the Tower of Babel was erected so that he dispersed people? Or like the god who felt the necessity to take the Narasimha avatara so that he can kill Hiranyakashipu? Or like the god who felt worried when Ravana tried to lift the mountain on which he was sitting so that he had to press it down using his toe? Which god? Or should we like just be the Superman that Nietzsche envisaged? I think that is probably the best version of what we can be, because Nietzsche is beautiful. And probably because we are literature people, we are somehow biased towards things of beauty, because our person, he told us it's a joy forever. So we cannot but quote John Keats even in a talk on posthumanism. So with that, I just wind up this meandering, uh, aimless deliberation on posthumanism and God, and why God is important in our posthuman deliberations. Of course, would love to listen to you. There were questions. Uh, yes, yes, ma'am. Deantimati, ma'am. Yes.
Uh, so, in this nihilistic presence, your presentation was so optimistic. It was enlightening, and seeing the God at the end of the tunnel was very promising for us. Actually, sir, with that credits, I should go on to my question. So, you were talking about this idea of the man and the superman setting our limits, extending our limits further. Like when Nietzsche's time, it was the limits set by the humans ourselves. But now, with the advent of AI, it really makes us worried when AI is pushing humanity beyond its limits of performance, especially with related to aesthetics and the potentiality of a human being is being pushed beyond a limit by the AI. Like, I don't know if we could match up to that level of expectancy of the AI. That's question number one. And number two is when we
let
are
us let
talking
us
about
have one question, because my brain is very slow.
okay,
uh,
sir.
I cannot
Okay,
have
sir.
multiple
Yes.
questions. I
Yes,
can't
sir.
multitask. uh,
Okay, sir.
one thought and a quote that came to my mind was by our Anton Wilson, who said, in a fast evolving world, one who stands still moves backwards. So I think that pressure is always on us, and especially us, academicians, teachers, because we cannot choose to stay idle. We have to learn. We have to learn to adapt. We have to learn to adapt and adopt and acclimatize and adjust and change. So better to look at AI as a challenge and as something exciting, because if we don't change, I think AI will change us. And yes, yes, it is.
Yes.
It
No,
looks a
sir.
little
Actually, if it was a, if the progression was a normal one as a human one, we would have easily adopted. What
exactly.
worries is the pace and the limits that AI is setting for us, especially when coming to aesthetics. Today, Mayan is not happy with his own perception of what beauty is. They are coming up with their new avatars that is replacing their real face, and they're getting lost in their own perception of identity. So, like, that makes me really little bit worried. Well, it might take some billions of years for us to attain that level of aesthetic perfection that AI is demanding from us, which cannot be adopted by us spontaneously at an instant.
Yeah, I mean, aesthetics always has a problem with technologies, so one feels sometimes. But then aesthetics is also in tune with evolution. Rasa, why sa, sah, sahitya, rasa. And Rasa is Brahman. The Taittiriya Upanishad would say that Rasa is Brahman, Rasa is God, aesthetics is God. You take the aesthetic experience and it is likened to God. And if you say it is God, you are also paying your tribute to technology, because if you believe in God, I mean, I'm not speaking about that in an atheistic or atheistic point of view, but the point is, if you believe in God, then you have to believe in technology, because technology is a faculty that the Creator gave us. So, using a faculty that the Creator has given us can't land us in any trouble, unless, of course, we use it for wrong purposes. And that is where the question of choice would come. You know, for what purpose would you use technology? Nothing is, everything is neutral. Let's be honest about it. Nothing is harmful or good in itself. There is no intrinsic value in technology. Technology is neither good nor bad. It depends on to what purpose we put this to put this to. So, and that is where AI can be nasty as well. Anything, any good thing, any bad thing, actually it is wrong to give an adjective good or bad to anything, which doesn't make any sense at all. And if we are going by the dictates of people like Hans Georg Gadamer or Martin Heidegger, being and time, then things things are just words. Things are just words. uh, you know um, what is it? Language is the house of being. We exist because there is language. So if we are going there, and if we go to places like, in the beginning there was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God,
What was God?
the word was God, and then we are in serious problem, or serious pleasure, great ecstasy, because it is there. Now, who knows? We may not know. Now we think people who adapt are going to fare better. In 2023, when ChatGPT came about, many people believe that it is going to adversely affect their jobs. And the first among those were the content writers, I would say, not teachers. Teachers are always very much in their comfort zone. They believe nothing can beat them. Only when they are swept away and pushed into the bin will they know that they no longer are there in power. But content writers were really worried. But look at present day, 5 or 6 months from ChatGPT, and uh, content writers are leveraging the possibilities of AI to such an extent that the quality has improved. Quality has only improved. It hasn't led to the demise of any good content writer. It has helped the man in manifold ways to collect material, to speed up the entire process. So it has helped, but there is always this big question mark over every kind of evolution, because this is not part of our body. It is an extrinsic evolution. And because this evolution has happened outside our body, you know, I'm not expected to say this, but my gut feeling is I'm trying to stay away from AI as much as possible. Yes, I am using AI, but my gut feeling, just my gut feeling is, after 5 years or 3 years, people who will be required, in application forms, they will say a strict disclaimer. People who have anything to do with AI are not required. I think there will be such a star condition supply thing to all vacancies, because um, already I see a lot of students losing the power to think because there is AI. And that is where I'm really worried. We have to, if we make a conscious effort to make sure that we are using it only, in an optimal way, then it is fine. But think of what happened with calculators. A simple example. Before that, people could calculate 3-digit sums very easily. Now, even if you buy something from the shop and 10 plus 20, they will still need to check it on the calculator before telling you it is 30. And they will double verify again on calculator. Now, what has happened with this, neuroscience would tell us that many areas of our brain which were active and which helped us in different ways have all gone dormant. The amygdala, for example, isn't active at all. Because of that, so many positive chemicals that are being secreted into our body, like oxytocin, for example, are not being secreted. And what is oxytocin? It is the bonding chemical as well. It bonds not only the mother and the child. Yeah, we traditionally say it binds the mother and the child. The mother, there should be a reason the mother should feel, connected to the child. Otherwise, the poor child is helpless. Human child is the most helpless of all children. But then it is also known as the bonding chemical, and that is where I feel very worried because. Uh, a simple example would be when we were students, when we were going on a study tour, the teachers would occupy the middle seats, dividing girls and boys. Why? Because they were worried that if boys and girls sit together, something might happen. Huh? A terrible beauty could be born. So they were worried. But nowadays, students go on study tour. Teachers don't even have to go with them because whether it is boys or girls sitting together or not, everybody is busy on their mobile.
Yes, yes.
Last year I went with a touring team, and that time, this last year or the 2 years before, there was this football World Cup happening, Messi and all, and everyone was glued to the mobile phone, and we didn't have to do any discipline. They were perfectly disciplined. Now, what that disciplining, what I feel is missing, on the one hand, it is very good because people are very responsible or they know what their limits are, that you can interpret it like that. But on the other hand, are people missing some of the finer moments of life, finer joys of life? That bonding, oxytocin is no longer secreted at all. Is it because of that
Is
that
this
every
posthumanism? Is
who
this
knows?
posthumanism or transhumanism?
It is
Maybe. Yeah. So
maybe.
I
It
just
is
have one more
acquiescence
question,
to the
sir.
neoliberal, it is essentially the acquiescing, the global acquiescing of the world that we get to see to neoliberal narratives. When we have something, a huge, powerful, a behemoth, a capitalist behemoth, supporting technology, supporting it in all quarters, pushing it through, just shoving it down our throat, we are going to acquiesce unless, of course, we have that level of consciousness in us. We are
Yes.
alert all the time to resist, to educate and agitate and then organize ourselves to stand up a hold of a resistance, which unfortunately has not been the case in the past few decades.
Yes.
But anyway.
Well put, very well put.
So I just have one more doubt, sir. As we are pushing humans from human to superhuman, are we coming up with an idea of creating a super god, which is a need of the day?
Creating what?
Super god, from god to super god.
I don't know.
Why are we still hanging on to the old gods and the old myths and
Well, because we are selfish. Because we created
how?
gods, we
Yes,
care for our gods still, and that
yes,
is
yes.
why we are so worried about our gods. We really care for them. Look at
I
our.
think this idea of a super god would resolve most of the political issues, world political issues.
See, we don't believe gods are strong enough. We believe that we have to share gods on our WhatsApp status, otherwise, gods are going to be really struggling. We believe that we have to, circulate these pamphlets with that big threat at the end. If you don't circulate it to others, you are going to have serious problems. Or those who circulated, one person had a lottery and another person had this. Those who one person tore it down and that person was bitten by a snake. So we really care for our gods. We know that we have to really canvas and we have to really do all the advertising and marketing for our gods. You know, WhatsApp statuses. I love going through people's WhatsApp statuses because it tells us a lot about people's status as well, mental status as well.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so many people are so concerned about gods. And I feel really concerned about their gods because their gods are really vulnerable. Had it not been them uh, taking care
Gods
of
are God.
them, gods would have been in.
Is AI the super god that we have created?
AI can
The
be a super god,
algorithms.
or maybe it is right now. It is playing the super god,
Mhm.
and it is taking away from us our rationality, our thinking
Yes,
capacity, all those
everything.
things without a doubt. Now, what would that entail is remains to be seen because it is too fast. Yeah, yes, Rapu.
So, as far my since we have been doing some work on AI and the interface of AI and translation at Radhampur University for quite a few years now, we have actually had the benefit of interacting with some cognitive neuroscience people, and they also brought in their ideas. As far as I have been able to grapple with this situation, all that I can make sense of is the way AI functions at the moment is purely statistical. That means it requires data. It can never be human because human beings do not require a comprehensive understanding of a phenomena to arrive at conclusions. The way we deduce, the way we induct is pretty different. It is not data driven, it is instinctive. So we have the capacity to jump across, to take quantum leaps from one point to another, which AI, every single model of AI that we have all around the world right now, not just ChatGPT, but the ones that are even helping people solve mathematical problems, complex mathematical problems. For example, there is a particular tool, this particular version of AI that Amazon has developed, which is used by the World Bank right now. And they're deciding which country to give money to and which country not to. All these algorithms are purely statistical. They require complete data sets, sterile data sets, not too many variations. They have to be regularized, they have to be well annotated for them to arrive at a conclusion. Even if one of the parameters remains unaddressed, they can't take a decision. On the other hand, human beings go about their everyday lives with half baked knowledge, or rather without any knowledge at all, and we get to take decisions, move on from one place to another. So essentially, AI cannot compete with humans because it lacks the potential for creativity. Creativity is the capacity to jump from point A to point Z without going to points B, C, D, and all others. This is something that machines can't do right now. None of them can, as a matter of fact. If one goes to the writings of Michael Arbib, who has been working on the cognitive revolution and the AI movement since the 1970s, the AIs have become a reality as a tool. We get to access them of late, but the idea of AI has been pretty long. It goes back to 40, 30, 40, 50 years. With ever since Chomsky's generative grammar became a thing, this has been going around, and people have been thinking about AI. We're talking about mimic intelligence. MI was also something which went out of fashion. I guess the name wasn't fancy enough, but there was something called mimic intelligence as well. So currently, what the status at which AI stands cannot hold a candle to what human beings at the moment can deliver. For if it was so, we would have been seeing a lot of changes in our social economics right now. As far as the challenges faced by human beings at large, it's mainly because of if there's a job which is repetitive, which can be fit into a pattern, which is extremely prescriptive, then that sort of jobs shall always be endangered by any advancement in the field of engineering and technology. That which can be automated, that which is repetitive, human beings can would lag. Human beings would We are biological creatures. We get tired. Machines don't get tired. They can perform at an optimal level all the time, round the clock. So whenever, if it's a manual work, if it's a work that's clerical, that can be repeated over and over again, if there is a pattern to it, a fixed set to it, machines will obviously triumph. But the moment we put machines to the challenge of coming up with something new, to innovate or renovate for that matter, machines will not be able to do it. So as far as the teaching profession is concerned, if uh, just as a matter of fact, if we do this, around the country, we have over 1,000 plus departments of English in every university, right? So if it so happens that every department of English decides that we are not going to go with the canonical text, we're going to take text every day. We're going to teach Dickens. Okay, we have got 22 novels to choose from. We will randomly change every semester. We will change every semester. We will change the orientation. We will shuffle the content from this year to that year. We keep on doing that. AI will not be able to hold on to that particular, uh, you know, uh, sort of uncertainty for a pretty long time until someone comes up with a model. And then again, the person who shall be able to model this will be a human being, will not be a machine, but will be a human being.
The
So yeah, if
humans
you
have
want to save
the
our job,
humans have the privilege to
exactly,
be arbitrary.
exactly. So since we can be arbitrary, exactly, that's the point. Since we have the capacity to be arbitrary, it would be always, I mean, if you want to save our jobs, or if we intend to stay relevant, it would always be to, harp on what we do the best, to be curious, to be innovative, to be creative, to always push the frontiers, to push the envelope continually, instead of, becoming couch potatoes. I guess that would be the best way to ensure that AI doesn't take over. At least it won't be able to take over. That's for sure. Not at the current stage.
I wonder if Ratul is, plugged on to some AI console because ideas were just flowing freely. So nice listening to interesting thoughts as well. Yes, other hands raised. Please feel free to express your thoughts.
Uh, so may I proceed?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. I am a student from second year, so it has been a very enlightening, you know, interaction with you. And I am also a fan of Nietzsche, and people, stereotype me as nihilistic student of our university. But I believe that Nietzsche is not at all nihilistic or nihilistic. So my question is to you is that Nietzsche said about this idea that ascetic ideal, most probably in his genealogy of morals, where he said that man has been trying to decenter religion, particularly religion has been trying to decenter man, and to give this idea of quote unquote transcend. And isn't that what technology is doing too? As from the post-human concept, or again there is this idea that means if AI is been, we are evolving, so will AI too. So I think at some point that we will stop thinking and become not human animals, we will become procrastinator animals. And I think post-human has this tendency to become procrastinator. So I would like to know from you what you do like.
I mean, I agree with you. Interesting thoughts, and I don't see a question there or something I can answer. Yeah, I think with you. I love your nihilistic spirit, which is lovely, and keep up that love for Nietzsche. It will not destroy you; it will only help you. You know, reach new realms of thought and understanding and questioning. And as you said, I also believe that it is just the configurations of power that change. The base always remains the same. So whether it is religion or whether it is technology, the way it works remains the same. Just that we are replacing one force, one mode of um, one apparatus with another apparatus to fill that space. We have something else. When religion was questioned by Charles Darwin, Matthew Arnold suggested poetry as the solution. We can find our solace in poetry. That is what Arnold said. And then with the world wars coming, people started having their doubts whether poetry can sustain. Poetry, in the face of Auschwitz, poetry is mute. Some people felt, and that is when structuralism broke down. People initially thought we have meaning. Then, it was the structure that gave meaning as far as the structuralists were concerned. But after the world wars, every war gives us new awakenings. After the world wars, people realized that no, we cannot think about meanings. We have to speak about meaninglessness. And that is where post structuralism was born, postmodernism was born with its questioning of the structuralist way of looking at things, which believed that there is one single meaning, or which believed at an absolute meaning. So there is no meaning. That is what. And then the question became how meaninglessness can be expressed. And that is where we went through the horrors of the Cold War, as well as the theory wars. As that was the time when this question, how meaninglessness can be sufficiently expressed through language became a prominent one. And then, trauma studies took it up. Trauma studies started arguing that unrepresentability is the essence of trauma. And, then suddenly everybody started looking at trauma as that one area where unrepresentability is, by definition, the essence of language. Language is, language fails. Here we were talking about how language fails as far as, you know, Dante was concerned when he tried to describe heaven. Similar is the case with people suffering from trauma. So, as you have rightly mentioned, the power configurations change, the words that we use change, but the system remains the same. The configurations remain the same, and we move from one way of looking at things to another way of looking at things. Now, technology is now the surrogate, is now the substitute, is now it is trending, just that it is trending, but it is another way to impose power. Our discourses will or are already are being controlled by AI, and not only controlled, our discourses are generated by AI. So, we are having a generation generated by AI. So, I don't know where a generated generation is going to go. Albina, very nice listening to you. Big thoughts coming from a second MA student. Great to have, I guess you have good teachers who help you think big, who give you the space to think big, and definitely you are putting in some hard yards as well. You have a lot of reading. Nice to listen. Thank you. It is not like you have to ask a question. Please express your opinions and feel free. Roshan, Florence, everybody. I have posted a feedback form in the chat box. It's not exactly for a certificate or anything. I'm not going to provide certificate. The organizers also won't provide certificate. It is just a feedback on the lecture. And if you want to have any questions, you can definitely post it in that feedback form as well. Roshan, yes.
Sir, good evening, sir. Sir, I have a question. You have said about the idea of Nietzsche that we killed God, and I want to know who that we refer.
Well, who is that we? That was what I was also thinking. Um, I think it is humanism that killed that God, or the death of humanism is, it is very, it is like there is no hard and fast difference, distinction, or no watertight compartmentalization. I think when Nietzsche said God is dead, he didn't simply mean God died on his own. He wanted to make it very clear that our ways of thinking, or probably he was trying to say that science and technology, or our rationality, idea of God itself has failed. It has failed to sustain us. And so that failure is what is represented by the death of the God. He's not saying that there is a person called God who stopped breathing, or who stopped showing the vital signs of life, and who stopped to, or ceased to exist. It is more in the sphere of thought, a death more in the level of thinking. Think about the idea of being. And this idea of being comes from the word be, to exist. We think about ontology. And if you look at language, be controls everything in the English language. Be is the be all, and that is why we have 7 forms or 7 avatars of be. Are, is, was, were, being. That is what we say. So being, what controls being? Now, what has happened to the beingness of God? God has ceased to exist. That is probably what Nietzsche said. But people understood it slightly differently. People understood Nietzsche to be saying something like Nietzsche was an atheist, and Nietzsche wanted to pronounce the death of God so that everybody would become atheistic. I don't think that is anywhere close to what Nietzsche wanted to say. No, Nietzsche was talking more about a thought, and his, just as who was it? Roland Barthes spoke about the death of the author and the birth of the reader in the same breath. Nietzsche also speaks about the death of God and the birth of the Ubermensch in the same breath. So Nietzsche envisions a future in which individuals would overcome the constraints of traditional morality and create their own value systems. And that is why he can introduce the concept of the Superman, representing individuals who would transcend the limitations imposed by conventional morality, conventional social norms, and the Ubermensch would be the creator of their own values, embracing life's challenges, affirming their desires and instincts. So, I think to understand the death of God, we have to first understand what this God is juxtaposed against, and the God is juxtaposed against the Superman. And what are the traits of the Superman? Those are what the God ceased to possess, and which is why God died. So I don't know if anybody can give a direct reply to who that we is, or who that we would refer to. Ratul, what would you think?
Well, might be a no-brainer, but whenever I have gone through this particular question before as well, or in discussions, I have found that there are actually three potential culprits in the name of list who might have committed the crime of killing God. The first one would be us, the creators of God themselves, where we sort of discarded the gods when we felt that the gods have fulfilled their utility. So the gods essentially were not gods, but sort of animals that we rear in poultries that help us. Gods have been used as symbols of intimidation for um, keeping people in line, the masses in line. God has been used as a emblem, as a symbol to consolidate empires and to, further civilizational causes in good ways as well as bad. But that's not the thing that I'm interested in. But then again, gods have changed with civilization. The infallibility, indefatigability of God has always been a big question mark if one looks at any part of the world. Migration stories would tell us, if we look at the way human beings have migrated from one part of the other, from one part of the world to another, gods have kept changing with the changing climes, with the changing weather, with the changing circumstances, with conflicts with other tribes people. Things have changed, gods have changed. So God has been in the process of dying at the hands of man, at the whim of man, for a pretty long time, ever since God actually came into existence in that sense. The second would be, since post-humanism and anti-humanism have been topics of discussion today, there is the possibility. I mean, you gave the reference of the Tower of Babel, right? The Tower of Babel, and the story behind it was God did not want man to climb the Tower of Babel to reach his heights, and so to confound the masses, he took away the comprehensibility, the mutual comprehensibility of linguistic comprehensibility amongst people, and people could no longer understand one another because they were speaking different languages. And cut to the 20th century, we live in a world where we have people like the generative grammarists, the generative syntacticians who are coming up with universal grammar, which is the underlying structure for all languages, whether irrespective of the language family, Indo-European, Austroasiatic, Dravidian, Tibeto-Burman, Sino-Tibetan, doesn't matter. There is a underlying structure, and according to that, all languages have come up. So whether you follow the principles in parameters technique, or minimalism as propounded by Chomsky, or if we go by the ideas of head-driven phrase structure grammar given by other syntacticians, Richard Kane, for example, uh, taking cue of the way the unity, the underlying unity, the underlying commonality of language has been done. It's as if man has been at work to prove God wrong, um, to show that his devices to divide have not worked. At the same time, the third instance which you gave, which was quite true, of Shiva pressing down on the mountain with his toes to teach Ravana a lesson for his dare to challenge his might, his position, or the way we find that Narashima, the Narashima avatar, actually goes about to ensure that Brahma's Vardhan is not violated, yet Hiranyakashipu is slain. He shall not die at the hands of an animal, nor at the hands of man, neither with any weapons, nor by any god. He shall not be in the air, nor shall his body touch the ground when he is dead. And that's how Narasimha goes about to rip his heart out, following everything that he was promised, not without any violation. Going by that argument, we will find that God, man's tendency, propensity to be gods, is the reason why man needs to kill God all the time. Um, if divide and conquer is a way, if we look around the world right now, the Israel-Palestine conflict, the Ukraine-Russia conflict, or the multiple other issues, scuffles we get to see all over the world. I shouldn't be using the word scuffle. It's pretty insensitive given the fact that thousands of people are dying, but that's how the West wishes to put it, and that's the language, that's the overwhelming linguistic imposition that we have to function under and in the current circumstances. So scuffles, it's only a war when white people die, it's scuffle when brown people die. So under the circumstances, uh, we find that man has been, or people who are part of that power structure, they are the ones who create and debunk gods to meet their vested interests. They have interests, they have their access to grind. The rest of us are pawns with not much to do and not much to do at all. We are the ones who are the lambs to the slaughter, in a sense. They do whatever they want to do with us, and if they need to create a god for that, they shall do so. If they need to destroy a god for that, they shall do so unhesitatingly in both circumstances. It's essentially the world being divided into haves and have-nots, not Shias and Sunnis or Hindus and Muslims or Christians and Jains and Sikhs or Buddhists or tribals and urbans, but essentially the haves and the have-nots. If that is the thing, then the haves have been like that. Uh, if one goes through the literature of David Harvey or Graeber, one would be one would find it very hard to deny or ignore that this has been the reality of humanity for as long as historical records can be found with some convincing evidence. Uh, I guess man has been responsible for the death and creation of God in all circumstances, depending upon his incentive to do so.
Exactly. But still, Roshan, you have every right to be uh, disappointed with the answers that we have given.
No
Because,
problem,
no,
sir.
no,
That
no, no, I understand the question, and I think it is important for us to probably think about it. I also don't have an answer, but I think somewhere we have, I'm not giving an answer, but some threads to think on. Probably we can think about what Michel Foucault said about death of God and death of man. When Foucault spoke about the death of man, Foucault's notion is primarily a critique of humanism. Definitely, a philosophical, and that tradition was being critiqued, and Foucault believed that with the rise of modernism, or with the rise of modernity, I'm sorry, especially in the 19th and 20th centuries, new discourses and new systems of knowledges emerged that rendered the traditional humanist conception of man obsolete, completely outdated. And so the death of man does not imply the literal extinction of human beings, but rather the end of a particular way of thinking about humanity.
Hmm.
Similarly, when Nietzsche proclaims the death of God, he is referring not only to the death of religion, but also to the death of science. I think so, to the death of science as well. So obviously, Nietzsche wouldn't have supported transhumanist idea that we can replace religion with science. If Nietzsche were here now, he wouldn't have agreed with transhumanism, because Nietzsche's God is an external authority imposing their truth on the individual. And the death of God should be approached as a metaphor to reject any attempt, any external imposition upon our own life, and instead it advocates an attempt to try to find our own individual voices. So the death of an external truth allows for the birth of the Übermensch. So uh, who died? As it is God. Who killed? Again, we have to think about it more as a metaphor, or not as a literal extinction, but as a metaphorical, symbolical death caused by whom? I don't know, but I would say that caused also by the birth of the Übermensch. The death of God is necessitated by the birth of the Ubermensch, or the fully empowered individual who doesn't allow himself or herself to be dictated by any external agency. And probably this is the extraordinary gift Nietzsche has bestowed upon us, the power to choose, the power to decide on our own, on as to who and what should govern us, or how we should live our lives. I think these are some ways in which we can think about it, but I would definitely invite better replies to it, because I'm not happy with my own way of answering that question. Any
Yeah,
better than?
No
I
problem,
may
sir.
personally think that those who fail to become Ubermensch have killed God.
Okay. Okay.
Means, for example, like we have certain characters from Chaucer's, like the false messiahs, like those who false prophets, for example, priests or Catholic church, you know the churchmen who used religion as a politics or example to control people. Means they have created this notion that God is all good, but you have to come to me to reach God. So as a result, people
Medium.
created this sense that for to reach God you have to reach a human being first. So as a result, those who uh, feel it problematic, they realize that or they have been fed lies. For example, we have certain beliefs that even in Islam we have certain beliefs that you have to marry four wives because the prophet did, but it's not exactly so. And as a result, it creates a false notion, even among those who teach this certain religions, or who are trying to become better by this learning religion. So as a result, I think those who, the false messiahs or the false prophets have killed God, the failed Ubermensch.
Yeah.
Essentially, the ones who wanted to grind the axe.
Yes,
Essentially, the ones,
precisely,
because
precisely.
this is the technique of the infallibility, or rather, the technique of the primacy of of the medium. This is the
Hmm.
primacy of the medium. So they are the ones who are the part of the status quo. If you call them the status quo, they are the ones. So you
Yeah.
want to reach God, you have to go through me. Follow
Hmm.
my words, not the words of God, but my interpretation of the words of God. That is going to be your prescription. Not description, but prescription. Yeah. So yeah, the
So
haves.
they killed God to make others feel that they
Yeah.
are God.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah,
That has been the case across all religions, across all organized religions for that matter.
precisely.
Not just religion, across corporate structures as well. This has been the case. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I have another one question, very short question.
My
Is
God.
there any
A very sharp
uh,
question or short question?
short question? Is there a difference between posthumanism and anti-humanism?
Yeah, definitely. Posthumanism and anti-humanism are very much different. The thing is, on the one hand, if you look at it, these are, posthumanism, transhumanism, anti-humanism, all share certain primary principles. But on the other hand, there are major distinctions as well between posthumanism and transhumanism and anti-humanism. So you were asking about anti-humanism, right?
Yes.
Posthumanism and anti-humanism. Now, anti-humanism is, first we need to remember that anti-humanism is not anti-human. Anti, it's like I cannot but stay away from that quotation. What rough beast It's our come around at last slouches towards Bethlehem to be born, because Alminar was talking about the prophet, and I was reminded of the desert, not desert, but the desert where the prophet was. And then we had the Narasimha with the body of a man, and the head of a lion. And then in Yetz's second coming, again, that figure that slouches towards Bethlehem to be born has a similar appearance. So uh, I don't know whether I'm feeling too, I'm getting overwhelmed by so many connections. I'm seeing so many connections everywhere, and these connections are there, and connections are there to help us definitely to find out connections as well. But so we are trying to look at post-humanism versus anti-humanism. Now, the point is, anti-humanism is, we discussed the death of God and Foucault's idea of death of man and all those things. Now, transhumanism versus posthumanism would say, yes, they come from different philosophical traditions and contemplate different priorities, but the main goal of transhumanism is human enhancement. They're interested in enhancing the possibilities of the human being. For transhumanists, we are not post-human yet. So this is one major way important thing to understand. You know, post-humanists would believe that we are already post-humanists, or we are already post-humans. But transhumanists would say that we are not yet post-humans, but in the near future, some human beings may eventually transform themselves so radically to become post-human. Okay, so we are not yet post-human. By how would they do that? By merging more significantly with technology, by embracing extensive possibilities of scientific discoveries. So transhumanism does not, again, this is important, it does not expropriate humanism nor anthropocentrism. It is not against it. It can be seen as the continuation of the humanistic endeavor, transhumanism. See, trans, think of the word trans, moving across. It is about the journey. It is about the process of moving from here to there, and the process is being highlighted in transhumanism. So it can be seen as a continuation of humanism, not as a rupture or a break with humanism. But that is very different from post-humanism, which is at the same time, post-humanism, I would say, has three, the post has three posts. One, it is post-humanism, a complete rupture with humanistic ideas. Two, it is post-anthropocentrism, a complete rupture with anthropocentrism. Now, our epoch is known as the Anthropocene, and we are anthropocentric, man-centric. Man is the leading organism in our time, so that is anthropocentrism. And thirdly, post-humanism is post-dualism, thinking beyond dualism. So these are some ways in which we can understand the differences between transhumanism and posthumanism. Now, if you look at anti-humanism, anti-humanism is again slightly different. It addresses the human in a different way, and though all of these see human as something not static but dynamic. Furthermore, none of them are against actual humans nor promote inhuman activities. Anti, the word anti usually tends to evoke such sentiments to give us the impression that anti, we are against, or they are against human. No, they are not against the human being. It is not anti-human at all. Here it is important to note that the term anti-humanist should not be and should never be confused with anti-human. The post-humanist approach is not anti-human. The recognition of non-human dignity does not come by denigrating actual humans. No, we are not saying humans are bad or humans are going to die or there is going to be an extinction of the species, but rather by understanding them as a part of a larger interconnected picture which does not stand on human supremacy. no privilege. That is all we are talking about when we are talking about anti-humanism. So it is about a continuation. It is about thinking in terms of anti, but not anti-human. It is anti-humanism. That is the main point we need to keep in mind. Did I answer your question?
Sir, is that the same meaning for post-human too?
No, posthumanism is different because it is not a continuation of humanism. No, posthumanism is never a continuation of humanism. Say, for example, look at the word post. Post is used in different senses. If you look at Terry Eagleton, for example, he would say that there is structuralism and post-structuralism. Terry Eagleton would say that post-structuralism is nothing but something that came after structuralism, something that continued what was there in structuralism. But most people would disagree with this way of looking at things. What is this? What does this term post mean? We have a pre-noon session or a morning session, and then we have a lunch, and then we have a post-lunch session. So what is this post? That comes after, that comes after lunch, and it continues what was, it gives us the impression that we are continuing the discussion we were having before lunch as well. That is post. But when it comes to terms like post-structuralism or post-modernism or post-humanism, it post doesn't mean a continuation. Rather, it means a complete break from all the major principles that the previous one stood for. Post structuralism is a complete break, a rupture in all the ways structuralism looked at things. Postmodernism, similarly, post structuralism had meaning, post structuralism didn't have meaning. Modernism believed that there can be meaning, postmodernism believed that there cannot be meaning. Modernism, similarly, humanism believed in the primacy of the human agency. It believed in the privileged status of the human being, and it gave a hierarchical higher status to the human being. Whereas in post-humanism, it is not a continuation. It is a complete break with that way of thinking about human beings. And we are no longer thinking about center and margins. We are thinking about everyone as equals. It is more an egalitarian way of thinking about things. It is not like, earlier man was at the center and machines or animals or plants were on the margins. But with post-humanism, what has happened is we have blurred these boundaries completely. We are no longer interested in who is on top, because that is not the way of thinking that post-humanism promotes. Rather, it promotes the idea of looking at things as coexisting. We are looking at coexisting, and harmonious, it needn't always be harmonious, but that coexistence and co-evolution is what matters. So technology evolves with human beings, animals evolve with human beings, machines evolve with human beings, everything evolves simultaneously, and there is no privileged status attached to human beings in post-humanism. Whereas in transhumanism, it is more a continuation. It looks at a development, a further development of human beings. So you are enhancing. Man is there, so Superman is an enhanced version of man. That is the way in which transhumanism or anti-humanism would look at things. So they are more for a continuation. So there is no clear rupture. A break doesn't happen there. For them, it continues the way of thinking, just that we are going one step ahead. Uh, I would look at it that way.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, another raised hand.
Barsha.
Barsa. Barsha.
You are on mute.
Okay. Good evening, sir. I'm Bosha. Well, I did have a list of questions for you, but I do understand that this session has been going a bit longer than we expected. I would read out a question from our fellow listener. Uh, Atish N has asked you, he has said, good evening, sir. I have a doubt. What's the difference between postmodernism and post-metamodernism?
Well, that is not our topic of discussion, but I would say metamodernism, in very simple terms, is postmodernism. Metamodernism. So, what came after postmodernism, if you ask, you can call it metamodernism. So, I would call it metamodernism equals postmodernism. Postmodernism also saw its end, let us say, by the early decades of the 20th century at least, and we see clear indications that postmodernism is no longer in vogue. So, metamodernism is characterized by certain tendencies that we see today. Of course, it is not a complete rupture. It is postmodernism. In one sense, it continues postmodernism's certain ways of looking at things. It still metamodernism also believes in this lack of trust in meaning and things like that, that is there. But then think about what happened in the other area, structuralism, post-structuralism, and after that we had the theory wars, and the theory wars led to after theory and against theory, post theory. Then we are there and thereabout. So what metamodernism actually is has to be defined by future generations, I would say, because we actually do not know. The romantics never knew they were romantics, and we say that we are meta-modernists, but we are not sure. Sometimes we may be called post-humanist, sometimes we may be called what is it, anthropocentric people, whatever it is, and sometimes we may be called Gen Y or Gen Z or whatever, millennials. So all these things are there. Now, anthropocentrism is not formal. It is not official. What is it? Anthropocene. No, not centrism. Anthropocene. We belong to the Anthropocene, but only unofficially. So I think all these other things as well decide what metamodernism would be, not what it is, but what metamodernism would be in the textbooks that our children may study maybe 20 years later. So it is just, I think people are not still agreed on whether we are in postmodernism or metamodernism. But in one word, for me it is postmodernism, whatever it is, whatever has come after postmodernism, that we call metamodernism. And then we have to invent more words so that we can keep this train moving forward. Yes. Any further thoughts on metamodernism are welcome, because I'm not very familiar with metamodernism. Not at all.
Yeah, I think, sir, your point on more words, like the limitations of our vocabulary, like the part you mentioned about like plant versus humans, technology versus humans, but we are talking about a coexistence. So to talk about plants or animals in human language is yet another challenge for, like, if we claim ourselves as post-humanist. I think that our vocabularies need to emerge, and the linguistics, how do I put it? Like the linguistic change should be made in this. Otherwise, like we are, how can we talk about animals and plants and think of their existence with us in our own language? So that is also, I think, a real challenge and a scope, a possibility for us to think more in this.
Yeah, as if we don't have enough problems. We are trying to create another problem. That is an academic. That is how we write our abstracts, right? This paper tries to problematize. Uh, yeah, I mean, why not? We have to think about it. It is unfair to talk about the problems of plants and animals using a human tongue. Uh, we need more tongues. Again, going biblical, more tongues. Yes, we need more tongues, and I hope animals would also help us, but they are not very interested in tips in any of these deliberations. or are they
Interest also seems to be extremely anthropocentric.
yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly.
Borsha, if you could like to conclude the session.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Does anybody else have any question?
Yeah, Shohumda is raising hand. Shohumda.
Okay, that is a long pending question.
No, this was just a passing thought. It came to my mind that into from the point of view of post-humanism, how would you look at the idea behind Leonardo da Vinci's painting of the Vitruvian Man?
मुझे पता नहीं, मालूम नहीं. I don't know much about the
It's just
Vitruvian Man, except I just know the picture. I don't look at it using any angles. I just look at it using my eyes. I don't know, sir.
just as a this is
Please,
just a
please.
passing thought. It came to my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, would love to listen to you though, because you have some thoughts
The
on it,
question,
definitely.
the question was post-modernist take on Vitruvian Man. Was
No,
that
no,
the
no.
question?
Post the
The
post-human.
post-human.
Yes,
Okay,
from that.
actually, no, I'm not. I am not much of an art historian. I've hardly read a book ever on art history,
The
but I do
idea
remember
behind the
Vitruvian Man. Okay, so essentially, uh, we all know that the Da Vinci was extremely interested in developing designs or schematics. Design is a very bad word. Schematics of the mechanical aspects of moving parts, including the human body. Which is why essentially all his designs, all his schematics that we get to find of the helicopter or whatever is based on the things that he has observed in the natural world. The Vitruvian Man essentially was one of his more adventurous explorations. Um, for he wanted to understand human symmetricity. Human symmetricity was something that he wanted to understand. It just actually happened to have a book in front of it. It's a comprehensive book. It's basically artists and their lives and works dedicated to Renaissance artists, but there is a reference to Da Vinci since you asked the question, which I believe might be pertinent to the question that you have asked. But then again, this might not be very satisfactory um, at any rate. But yeah, so essentially what happened was before Da Vinci became, rather, Vitruvian Man was experimented with. Da Vinci was influenced by the pathos of by the ethos of the time, and which was the physics aspect of things had come into reality. So people were starting to observe in things in terms, not in terms which would later on become something which we today identify as the discipline of physics, much more concrete, which can be calculated, predicted. So there is a predictability aspect to it, and he was heavily influenced by this particular trend of the time. That was the reel of his time, and he was affected by it. And so when he set about doing these designs at the period when he drew the Vitruvian Man is essentially the same time when he was actually making the schematics of the helicopter and the first aircraft, same time, almost just a couple of months here and there. And so in Vitruvian Man we find three things: the symmetricity with geometry. So he wanted to create a geometry in which if human beings were opened up like a cabbage cut in the middle, how would it spread out? Would it be in a circle? And if the symmetricity is there, the quest for symmetricity goes back a long time. Even it predates Da Vinci, it predates all the people that we can possibly think of. Symmetricity has been something people have been looking for. Symmetricity has been likened with the truth, with symmetricity being the truth, being true, something of that sort has been there for a long time. So my guess, Da Vinci was
being the
kind of
ideal,
influenced by
representing the ideal, the perfect man.
exactly.
Yes.
What was the ideal thing? What's
Yes.
beauty? What's perfection? That might be there. So as you said, this post-human aspect of this. What could be the post-human aspect of the Vitruvian
Yes.
Man?
We
Yeah.
look at it from that lens.
Okay. So yeah, there is an aspect. I'm just working this out in my head right now as I'm speaking, thinking out loud. basically. Uh, One is Da Vinci is essentially experimenting with a particular way of looking at the human body, the way he can best represent it and highlight the symmetricity inherent in it. The methodology, his approach, is not very human. It's not humane either. It's quite mechanical. He is driven by a curiosity which would provide us insights into the human condition, but in a very different way, as if he has been able to distance himself from the human reality, as if he has been able to dislocate himself from the human condition. He is no longer human. He's just a curious machine trying to explore what the human body is, what the human condition is through the human body. What does it contain? What does it represent? So, in that sense, in that way, perhaps, possibly, uh, further investigation can be carried out in this direction. Yeah, there is a lot to unpack here. There is a
Yes.
lot to unpack
That
here.
that's yeah that's one pers- uh, perspective in which we can justify the Da Vinci's creation of Vitruvian Man. But while listening to this, I was thinking if anyway, if in any particular way we can say that the very idea of posthumanism, does it subvert the concept of Vitruvian Man, the perfect, the
Or we're going back again, I mean, there can be another question to this, like,
yes, does it
isn't,
subvert the idea behind Vitruvian Man?
fine. Does it
The very
so again, then again, are we very sure of what Da Vinci set about to do in the first place when he was drawing the Vitruvian Man? This is all guesswork. He didn't keep a detailed diary of what he was doing, what the thought process was behind when he was doing the Vitruvian Man. Maybe he was doing just what most humanists are doing right now, but he was doing it back then. There is the possibility. We don't know. And perhaps subversion was not the idea. The fact that Vitruvian Man in itself is is an act of subversion, is an act of defiance to the contemporary trend back then, uh, vis-a-vis post-humanism in the 21st century. Maybe that is a possibility. That is a possibility. A lot of things are possible with people who have the audacity to put brush on canvas. They have the capacity to go another extra mile where words are limited, pictures go another way, sculptors go even further. So yeah, that's there. Painters are obviously the ones who are going to, you know, uh, be extremely complicated to unpack.
uh, problematize would be a more
Yeah,
academic
yeah.
word.
Academic word for,
But
yeah,
yes,
problematize.
Lacan would definitely beg to differ because he says painters add more things rather than subtract. And in one of his lectures, he spoke about subtracting as the best way to convey meaning because he felt the more you add, the less you are able to convey. Uh, and he gave the famous example of the sculptor, how the sculptor is different from the painter. The sculptor does it by subtracting things. He sees a piece of
Subtracting.
stone and he subtracts
Yeah,
things
cutting
from it
it from.
to produce meaning, whereas a painter keeps on adding new things, and that probably, and probably that is why the postmodernist painting has this idea: less is more. Less is more. To produce more meaning, you have to say less, and that probably takes us into close, in close proximity to the idea that silence can communicate more than any violence through language. So yeah, interesting thoughts. And I was thinking when Ratul was talking to us about taking a cross section of the human mind or human brain, like we would do with a cabbage. I was thinking that his mind or brain would look something similar to what we see behind him. All those books are there in the cross section of his brain. It seems he seems to know so many things about so many different things, and jack of multiple trades. I don't know, but that was lovely. It was interesting to listen to Vitruvian man, and hopefully Da Vinci must be shifting in his grave, uh, tossing and turning. Uh, he must be. I don't know if it feels like a tickle or if it feels like a torment. But he must be happy that people still call him, invoke him in even discussions on posthumanism. Uh, Da Vinci was a great jack of great trades. Uh, so an all-rounder in many senses. So yeah, it is nice, Soham sir, that you brought Da Vinci here. I hope you will have a visitor at night, probably in your dreams. Mm, yes.
Borsha?
Okay, sir. Do I have your permission to conclude this session? Is that okay, sir? Okay. I'm just gonna go. Does anybody has any questions left? No.
Before you end, Borsha, Sir has posted a link, a feedback link. So kindly fill that up and submit it, and we'll have further discussions, and we'll inform you about that so that we can have a good and enriching academic experience after this session. So just a quick reminder, please, everyone who has joined today's session, kindly fill up the form and keep in touch with us.
Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. Happy to have, a small but responsive and responsible and concerned uh, audience with lot of inputs. This is something that we get rarely. We give lectures and then the silence, rest is silence. But here we had a lot of violence. We had a lot of problematizing, and a lot of people in their graves are having terrible sleep. So yeah, it was very nice, and I think this is something that we miss most of our academic careers. So thank you for the opportunity personally from my side, and thank you all for your wonderful listening and wonderful appreciation and cooperation. It was great. Thank you, this wonderful college as well, and special thanks to my good friend Shumafa for giving me this invite to be informally giving a lecture, which is always a pleasure, so that I don't have to worry too much theoretically, but I can be a little offhand. Thank you so much.
So I just wanted to
Thank you so
thank you because from the beginning of the session, I was wondering if posthumanism specifically caters to futuristic worlds, and somehow that is exactly where you started from. That posthumanism does not only mean futuristic world; it can also mean something from the ancient. And I do not know if you do realize that you were able to questions all. You were able to address all the questions that we had as academicians thinking about posthumanism and anti-humanism. I had this myth within me that thought that posthumanism essentially was anti-human, and you were able to address that and clarify with such wonderful examples and creating a narrative that was equally entertaining, and I really want to thank you for that. And I want to thank everybody else who has joined in this session purely out of thirst for knowledge and understanding, because this is how the round table was created, with our thirst and our perseverance to keep that fire within us. And this has been a wonderful session. I could not have imagined this to be such an interactive one. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.